Form's pretty good at the minute, so he's just a bigger threat to Haaland, as Haaland would be, I think. And you've got obviously Mahrez, Grealish, they're a team working together. De Bruyne has some his passing, his range of passing, his crossing, everything like that. He's a very difficult player to contain, so however much experience is in that defence, it's a difficult squad to be up against.
Absolutely. Right, let's take another pause here, because now we're going to go join Alistair Mann once again. What a treat. We're getting quite a bit of him in today's show. He's with Andy Morrison, who is part of the commentary team today, but they are joined by a very special guest, none other than the Beast himself, and I'm not talking about Negredo, I'm talking about Akinfenwa.
Would you like to have managed this guy, Andy? You've managed
I'd
for a
like to
while.
have played against him. I really would. I would love to challenge it. It would have been unique, you know, and similar. I mean, I played at a fair weight in modern day football, and, you know, my strength again was being able to get against people and move them. And again, when I had to run around, and probably why I didn't maintain playing in the Premier League. You know, you get up there and then you find out what your weaknesses are. But as was already been said, I knew what my strengths were and I used them, and I didn't let anything stop me. And yeah, great testament to the big man.
Let's get to today's game. You're here because you've got a particular interest in one of these teams.
Yeah, man, listen, I'm a die-hard Liverpool supporter and I won't be ashamed for it, even though it's not the season that I wanted and what we ain't been used to. But yeah, man, I'm here to see which Liverpool team turns up.
Which one do you think?
Do you know the maddest thing is? It could be 3-1 either way, and that's just what it is. We had Liverpool that turned up, beat United 7-0, and then went to Bournemouth and lost 1-0. I see the starting lineup with Jota, Salah, Nunez. I thought Gakpo, the Jota's the one that, but again, any one of them. But I'm a bit surprised with Jota starting. But everything else, I would have started Elliott, Fab, Hendo. I think you need that in these games, and then the back four is the back four. So listen, if the Liverpool team turn up that we know it can, especially with no Haaland, even though Alvarez comes in and he's a World Cup winner, I don't care what anybody says. As players, when you see somebody who's as formidable as Haaland not in a team, it does give you a jolt and a boost. But it depends, because you know City played with a false 9, even though Alvarez is a 9. It's what Liverpool team turns up, and that's what I'll put it down to. And that's no disrespect to City, because we know what City can do. But it's what Liverpool team turns up.
What do you think, Andy, about today's game?
Well, I like the loyalty. But for me, if the best City turn up and the best Liverpool turn up this year, then I think City win. I think if they're both at the very top of their game, I think City win. In the past, it would be a lot closer.
Even without Haaland. So that's what I'm saying. So right now, City for me is in that transition with that number 9. Yeah. So they've played more with Haaland than that without. So if you think, I'm asking, so if the best City turned up without Haaland and the best Liverpool turned up, would you still say City wins? But I get it, because at the Etihad, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. So would you still say that without Haaland?
I would say, yeah, with the two teams. It's just, I don't think it's... I know we've moved on from Mane, but it's not the same Liverpool at the minute. And, you know, you've got players that are fitting into a system. Elliott's still a young boy coming through. So it's not, like I say, you look at the great Liverpool team of 2 or 3 years ago, even last season, and they're formidable. This doesn't quite look as strong.
A quick question for you. It might be difficult for you to answer. What's happened to Liverpool? Why aren't they top 2 this season?
Do you know what? And I know people are going to say that it's an excuse, but I do feel if you've played every game of every minute last season of every competition and you fall short, mentally what that takes, and then the World Cup as well, and losing Mane. So you know, when the stars, there's so many factors, you know what I'm saying, that's come into play. And of course it's excuses, and Klopp has come out and said we still expected to be better, and we all did. But for me, that plays a massive, and so people may just say, everybody plays a lot of games, but when you're talked about to do the quadruple, to be arguably the best team ever, and then the bigger two in the sense of Champions League and League, you miss out, but you've done all the work to get there. It's a knock-on effect, and then of course you lose Mane, and then the World Cup comes. So I think for me, and then like we saw at the beginning of the season when City played Liverpool, and Liverpool had all their team, all their players up, Diaz was there, they looked like, okay, even with the transition, would still be there or thereabouts. And then you saw it just fatigue kicked in. And that's why I feel. So for me, I can put a finger on it, or part reasoning, it's not gospel, but that's why I look at it and think, all right, look, if we finish top 4, it's been a successful season in comparison to how the season's panned out, and then we go again next year. That's as a Liverpool supporter, I look at it, and maybe I'm just looking like that because just to save my heart like that, but also that's how I'm looking at it, and I do think that logically you can look at it from outside looking in.
Fantastic. Andy, thank you. Andy on co-commentary with me. I'll tell you what, I wish Andy Bayo Akinfenwa was on co-commentary with me. That's a fantastic few minutes in your company.
Thank you.
He even came out of retirement to play one game a few weeks ago, and he just told me he missed a penalty.
That. Well, I told you that in confidence.
I know. He missed a penalty. He missed a penalty. Can you believe it? Anyway, that's it from... Have we got time for the rest of the game? I don't know if we have. Back to the studio, Kel.
A corporate level about decreasing their value.
Thank you, Alistair, man. I mean, that is a moment, isn't it? Calling out Akinfenwa. I mean, you're a braver man than me, Alistair, man, let me tell you. Great to have Akinfenwa out there on the show. Massive thank you. I believe as well he was mobbed getting into the stadium as well. A lot of love for that man there, giving us his thoughts of the Liverpool team. Now, if you want to give us your thoughts, you can do that, or even get a question in. You can use that WhatsApp number that is on the right of your screen there. That's how you can connect and get involved with the show. And while you're doing that, let me tell you, you might as well go and get on the Manchester City app, because you've got loads of brilliant content on there, including our official Manchester City magazine, where we've got some great features with some real informed star players at the moment. There's a brilliant interview on there with Nathan Ake, and a brilliant interview with Yui Hasegawa, who has been incredible form in the women's team. I think is my player of the season so far over there. And not just that, we've got another treat where we asked Emil Heskey to give us his Nightmare City 11. So if you want to check out all of that, just head on over to the Manchester City app, download it, and of course you can also gain access to City Plus and Recast, so you can watch games and enjoy documentaries. Now, I'm now delighted to say as well, 2 become 3 in the studio, because fresh over from the CFA, EDS manager Brian Barry Murphy is back with us in the studio. Brian, how are you, sir?
Thank you, and apologies for being late.
Never apologise. You've got just a small matter, of course, the EDS team, and we mentioned at the start of the show, the games are coming thick and fast. Big one again, I think, is it you travel over to Tottenham, I think, is it on Monday? How are the lads feeling? How are you feeling about it?
I think a little bit of resemblance to the first team in terms of our lads are coming back from international break. Most of them have been away with different countries. You're just you have, I suppose, no real idea where in terms of what they've done over the last 2 weeks, in terms of the amount of game time they've had and travel. So it's a little bit unknown, but I think it's again a good part of their learning experience to have to do that and go into a tough game on Monday. It
was just before the break, Brian. I actually asked the question, because City were in such great form, had the international break come at a difficult time, and obviously you're going to be living and breathing with the consequences of that. How quickly or how difficult is it to get them back into the, thinking about club football, or does it happen quite easily?
Yeah, I honestly don't know. I think there's a bit of apprehension in terms of you just don't know how easy it is to pick up that momentum again. Like you said, our lads were in great form, playing really well. But I think it's an exciting opportunity to see if we can replicate what we did in the last parts of the season before the international break and pick it up as quickly as we can, because for our season there's quite a short finish now. I think we've got 5 games left in the season, or 6 games left in the season. So we have to go through that pretty quickly and adapt pretty quickly, or else we won't be able to challenge for what the lads want to do, which is trying to win a league title again.
Yeah, which I think as well it would be thoroughly deserved given the season so far and some of those performances. Now, before we chat to our special guest here in the studio, and another one pitch side, I won't tell you that is in just a second. We've been running a poll on Twitter because Bernardo Silva, when he scored here in our last home game, that became our 1,000th. That's tough, easy for me to say. Premier League goal at home. What a treat. 1,000 goals scored here at the Etihad Stadium. So we've been asking you for what is your favourite. We narrowed it down to 4. I mean, we could have had so many. But we begin with this one from Ilkay Gundogan. If you were there, you'll know it was a very, very special moment indeed. Unbelievable goal there. Of course, that was in the last game of the season against Aston Villa. So that was number 1. We then went to Vincent Kompany against Leicester. Don't shoot, Vinny. Please do. Boom. Wow. So that was vote number 2. For vote number 3, we then went to Raheem Sterling against Southampton. The Bruyne feet there as well. Oh. And number 4, I wonder what one it can be. Of course, it had to go in the shortlist. Arguably the most iconic goal, not just here, but in Premier League history. The Sergio Aguero against QPR goal. So those were the 4 you were choosing from online. Let's see what our guests are thinking here in the studio. I mean, there's a strong leader at the moment. We're going to reveal the winner at half time. Out the 4, Brogan, where are you thinking?
I'm going to say Aguero's just for what it represented at the time. But I'd also put Company's up there because I remember being at that game and there was just no way to get through. And Company, of all people, puts it in the back of the net.
I know, with an unbelievable finish. I mean, I feel like that's what the poll's saying so far. The Aguero one, I think, given it represented. But what about for you, Steve? You the same thing?
Yeah, the Aguero thing, obviously. But again, I was at the game where Company did that. And I can remember him taking a touch, and it looked as though initially he was going to shoot, and you could actually hear the crowd going, no, no. And then he unleashed an absolute... I mean, he could have hit that shot about 10, 15 times, and it would not have hit that spot. It was just an absolute perfect strike. It's funny with this one, because I'm actually quite friendly with Paddy Kenny, the goalkeeper, and he keeps on winding up the Man United fans on Twitter about this.
It is, I think, given everything it represented, Brian, that might be, I mean, it's leading the polls, I think, but that goal is probably the most important at the Etihad.
Yeah, I think all three of you will have a longer association with the club than me, but it's interesting that's referenced around the club inside the academy. There's all sorts of references to it in terms of visual pictures of that scene, and the 9320 is scrawled all over the gym, the dressing room. So the players are almost like using that as a blueprint of what it should look like to play for Manchester City, is that you never stop until the last moment, and they reference 9320 whenever there's a late goal or anything. So I think the significance on the club as a whole can't be underestimated, and it is probably amazing.
And I guess as well, given this run until the end of the season, you know, we've said we're 8 points behind Arsenal. We can go within 5, but you look at the Gundogan goal. That was literally one of the last kicks of the season that year. The QPR one. That's the kind of energy that City are going to have to dig into now if we want to try and close against Arsenal, aren't we, Brian?
Yeah, and I think something that the club's become synonymous with is that capacity to come from behind in games or score late goals or overcome almost every obstacle, and it's something that's preached to our younger players from higher up. So the guys at the top, especially, cheeky references that they want the players to experience that feeling of having to win, or else you can't succeed in winning a league. And I'll probably never experience that during my career, but I think for the players to have to understand that they have to perform, or else the consequences are you have to live with that sense of failure is significant at this club. So the guys on the pitch here today have become exceptionally good at that, and no doubt they'll revel under those pressure situations.
Absolutely. Right, let's then go back down pitch side. I told you the guests are coming thick and fast today. We can now go hear from former Liverpool player and of course former Premier League player, absolutely brilliant. Charlie Adam is giving us his thoughts ahead of our game against Liverpool.
Is Jurgen hurting right now then about what's happened?
Absolutely, because you want to be challenging for the title. You want to be at the top. You want to be fighting for the big trophies. Unfortunately, they're out the Champions League, they're out the title race, which will hurt Liverpool because they're used to winning trophies, and they'll want to get back to that as quick as they can. But the big objective now is, can they get in Champions League? Because if you're in the Champions League, then you can attract the top players, and that's what they'll be looking forward to for next season.
Very sort of heavy midfielder type question I'm going to ask you now, because you play with Steven Gerrard. I just wonder if you see similarities between him and Kevin De Bruyne at all.
Yeah, they have the whole package. I think Kevin has been incredible. I've played against him a couple of times, and it's not just his. Everybody thinks on the ball and he sees a pass, but it's off the ball. The work rate, the intensity he plays at is incredible, and I see a lot of similarities. He can do everything that Steven can do, and to put him up there with Steven Gerrard is incredible. But I think Man City fans will hold him in high esteem at this football club. He's a world-class footballer. Had a little dip in during the season, but when I said in that Champions League game, he just turned up, and when they need Kevin De Bruyne is now to the end of the season, and if he can be in top form from now to the end of the season, then Man City will have a right good chance of winning this title.
My final question is your gut feeling about how this match will go today.
I think it's going to be a high-scoring match. I think both teams. Yeah, I think both teams will score. And I think if Liverpool can get a draw at this, it's a tough week for Liverpool. City, Chelsea, and Arsenal in a week. I think if they can come here and get a draw, I think it'll be a big result for them going forward for the rest of the week. So I'm going to go for 2-2.
Thanks, Charlie.
If you've just tuned in, welcome back to Matchday Live with me, Cel Spellman. We have got just under half an hour until we kick off in our Premier League fixture against Liverpool. We've had a cracking show so far, jam-packed. We've got some brilliant guests in the studio, brilliant guests pitch side. Brian, I just want to quickly pick on something there that Charlie Adam was talking about. Very up and down season for Liverpool, and you know, I don't think it comes as no surprise that Klopp has said they found it difficult at times. Dealing with pressure as a manager, how difficult is that? And obviously Klopp will be feeling that. Do you kind of, how do you deal with that?
I haven't been inside their dressing room, but I get the sense that they're almost gone past the stage of disappointment. They're almost planning for the next stage. You can see the signs of an involvement in their squad with the signings they've had, and almost I suppose the integration of that dynamic type of forward player that they've now got in Gakpo. We've seen Nunes, obviously Harvey Elliott's in today. I think there's an expectation that the midfield will start to evolve with a younger type of player over the course of the next season or two. So I think they're almost in that next stage of transition. And, I think they'll almost sense as if they've got not a whole lot to lose here today in terms of where they're at. So I think it's a difficult game, but I think as we saw in the cup game, I think our players have showed that they have the ability to overcome this team, and hopefully they will. Absolutely, we need those 3 points, indeed. Now, sat next to me, we've got a very special guest making her Matchday Live debut. Brogan Crowley, an Olympian, competing in the skeleton. That moment when you can now say you are an Olympian, which is also just very cool for me to say. What was that like for you after all those years of hard work? What, you know, can you remember the day you found out, and tell us about that feeling?
Yeah, so for us in skeleton, it's a bit of a strange one because you know whether you've qualified or not off your races. So I remember even after my 8 races to qualify for the Olympics, I knew I was going, but I still wouldn't call myself an Olympian. And even at the Olympics, I was in my kit, and until I raced, I would still not say I was an Olympian. A year before I went to the Olympics, I didn't think I was going to get there, had injury problems. So for me, it was incredibly proud. I remember after my race just being really emotional, just for what it represented and my journey to get there.
Of course, and you know, it's incredibly tough for anyone to get there, but I know even we were talking off camera, the injuries that you've had, but also for those who might know or might not know the skeleton, and we were chatting to Steve, arguably one of the most physically demanding sports, I think, across the spectrum, really. Just for people who might not know, how difficult is the skeleton?
I mean, it's a really difficult sport, especially at the start. You just have no control. You don't know what you're doing. I mean, I stepped into the sport just having seen it on TV and thinking it looked cool. So I went from being quite good at athletics to being really bad at skeleton. So it was difficult to get my head into that, being bad at something. The training, even compared to what I did in athletics before, it's so tough. Wow. We train 6 days a week. It's over like 6-hour sessions. It's loads of lifting and loads of sprints. So the training is really demanding. It's really heavy stuff.
And then, you know, you said there it was TV, because skeleton maybe isn't actually something, you know, I think that young people maybe go to straight away. What was it about it that you think captured you and you said, no, I want to go from athletics to skeleton?
I think I remember watching the 2014 Winter Olympics, and I just saw it and thought it looked really cool. And at the time I was having a few injury problems in athletics, so I needed something to just get my enjoyment back in sport again. And so I applied after I saw it and ended up kind of going through a talent ID process where they just recruited me. I think because I came from a sprint-based background in athletics, it probably suited the start of the skeleton, because it's a sprint start. So they clearly saw something in me, which they thought I'd be crazy enough to try it.
Well, yeah, and it obviously clearly worked, because then you've gone and competed at the Olympics. Outside of the Olympics, Big Blue, and I'm guessing, I mean, you were saying before, I think your uncle's here as well. So, being a Manchester City fan, what are some of your earliest memories of being a Blue?
I remember, there's only one game I remember at Main Road, and it was against Liverpool, and I remember Danny Murphy scoring a penalty and we lost. But that's the only game I remember. I think I was too young. But because I used to do athletics, I remember the stadium transforming from what was the Commonwealth Stadium. So sitting in the family stand over the side with all my family and my brothers, I remember those games. And then obviously as we started to pump the money into it, we got new owners. The transformation has just been incredible to see, but in my heart I'm still one of those City fans from the start, so yeah, I love watching them.
And what have you made of, obviously, I mean, the trajectory the club have gone on kind of speaks for itself, but particularly this season, what has been your assessment kind of overall of Manchester City's performances?
I think we're kind of coming into form at the minute. I think it was difficult as it seemed like we were losing a grip on Arsenal a little bit in the middle of the season, but it's nice that it feels like we're there challenging again for the race. I mean, as you said, we've still got the game here to come, so there's an exciting few games coming up, and I'm really looking forward to kind of seeing those. And City are such an enjoyable team to watch play at the minute. I mean, whether Haaland or whoever's injured, you've got so many players on the bench that you can just see that are of the same quality. So I love watching City play, and yeah, they're my team.
And finally, I'd like to ask this to everyone, favourite City player, it can be present or in the past, is the one that jumps out for you? If it's not Steve Howey, who might it be?
I think I've got to say Aguero, just for what he did for the club.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, Steve.
Sorry, Steve. Yeah, sorry.
If in doubt, pick Aguero.
Listen, we're going to do some of the best tackles we've ever seen by a City player, and you'll be top of that list, Steve, I guarantee. OK, well, listen, massive thank you to Brogan, who's going to be sticking with us, remember, as we come back at half-time, then at full-time. Now, there was a very special thing that happened this week. Before we speak about it in the studio, we're going to hear from Big Steve, because there was a short list of players announced to be inducted into the Premier League Hall of Fame, and one of those was none other than Mr. Yaya Touré.
Yeah, thanks, Kel. We've already got a bit of atmosphere building up here, and I'm lucky enough to be joined by a fan, Big Steve. I always like to get the views of supporters, I'll be honest. I speak to ex-pros and current pros, but what we're talking about particularly at the moment is Yaya Touré and the Hall of Fame. Do you feel that he warrants a place in that?
Yeah, for me, 100%. I think everything Manchester City have done in recent times involves Yaya Touré. I think that 2014 season under Pellegrini, 20 goals and 13 assists from midfield is unbelievable. And I think all the key moments, looking back recently, involves Yaya Touré. So for me, yeah, he's a Premier League legend.
Where do you rate him in terms of all the great players who've played here?
Well, I think he's unlucky not to have a statue outside with the rest of the legends. I think he's been brilliant for us. The fans still sing his name in the South Stand now. That's how much he means to us, and I just think it'd be fitting to get his recognition from the Premier League.
Is he unique?
Oh, definitely. I mean, these games where you think he's not really doing an awful lot, and then all of a sudden he can pick that ball up from deep and drive with it, and he get key goals and things like that. He's definitely unique in that respect.
I always think of him as a great set-piece taker as well, free kicks on the edge of the area. Was he special, particularly in that regard too?
He was, and there was a few times where I used to say to my friend next to me, nah, he's not going to get that over the wall, and all of a sudden, bang, it was in. But he scored quite a few free kicks in his time, and yeah, he was one of the best at that.
What's your gut feeling? Is he going to get into that Hall of Fame? Is he going to get enough votes?
I hope so. I urge people to vote for him, think about what he did for Manchester City, and think about what he did in the Premier League. You know, when Yaya Touré was in full flow, there was no better sight for me, and yeah, I think he's going to get there.
All right, well, Big Steve has already voted, I think, for Yaya. Let's see if he does get into the Hall of Fame. Back to you, Kel.
Thanks, Alistair Mann, and thank you to Big Steve as well. It's always great to hear from him on the show. He looks a very serious young lad. They almost look like a young Pep Guardiola on the sideline. We was there talking about, of course, Yaya Touré's nomination into the Hall of Fame. Can he join the likes of Thierry Henry, Cantona, Roy Keane, Bergkamp, just to name a few who have already been inducted, and alongside managers Sir Alex Ferguson and Arsene Wenger, I think it's safe to say we've got a manager here at the Etihad that will be following in their shoes. Steve, Yaya Touré, and Big Steve said it there, in full flow, was there or a better centre midfielder, particularly at that time, and how key was he for Manchester City's success?
I didn't think there was a better player than him. I mean, I used to watch the games, and for me, he would basically, this is how good he would basically dictate the complete game. Everything went through him, and as Big Steve was sort of saying there, it was just sometimes so impressive to see him pick the ball up and just ease past players, not with difficulty, ease past players. You know, his control was ridiculous. Some of his finishes, some of his goals that he scored, oh wow! And you know, he's passing, everything about him. I mean, a top player. But as I said to you, I mean, there's a good few names on that list.
Yeah.
I don't think you could really kind of have any fuss about any one of them being in. But if I was to pick one of them from that group, I would certainly pick him. But as I said, every one of them I think deserves, because every one of them's been fantastic in the Premier League. We
can have a look at them here. Some of those that have made the shortlist as well, and it is so tough, isn't it, Brian? Because as Steve said, there's every single one of them in their own right did so much for their clubs. Yaya Touré, though, being the City player in there, how much would you have loved to have a player like that in your centre midfield?
I think we're always looking for players who can do something slightly different, and a lot of our players will have a lot of the same skill sets in terms of what they develop through academy football. And then for someone to look at Yaya, he can just go past players like Steve said, and so easily. And we're always looking for that's something different in each player, and especially players who play in that area of the pitch. When you can eliminate a player and go past them 1v1, I think it makes it so difficult for the opponents, because it's hard to plan for that situation. And that's what we're speaking about all the time. Those players with a point of difference or some unique quality are so priceless in the game, because they're so valuable to clubs and so exciting for supporters to watch.
Absolutely, yeah. So I couldn't agree more. And I would not like to have been facing up against Yaya. And I think back, Brogan, there's so many key moments in key games where Yaya Touré stepped up, whether that be in the FA Cup, whether that be the game against Newcastle, whether it be Palace. He just gave us so many special memories, and I think Jolene says we probably wouldn't have had the success we had he not been playing for us.
No, I agree with that completely. As you said, he's such a creative player. He can just change the game like in the flash of an eye, and he's created so much for us when we've been struggling in games. So it's those kind of players which are key for the squads, and they're the game changers. They're the ones that can just do something, as I've said, when you're struggling in a game. So he's been massive for the club, and in the Premier League, I think he's been one of the best players we've seen.
Absolutely, I think as well. I think one thing that sums up, Jolene Lescott on the show said, even with Aguero and David Silva, he says, if Yaya Touré wanted to win a game and turned up, you'd win the game. And that's what he kind of always said. He said when Yaya Touré was on, you were more or less going to win. So let's hope that he does get the votes needed to enter the Hall of Fame. Now, before we recap the team news, which is on the bottom of your screen, and we get some final thoughts and look at our midfield and attack here in the studio, I've got one more treat for you. One more special guest. This has come out of nowhere. I didn't even know this was happening at the start of the show, but it's none other than Mike Myers. Austin Powers himself is here. Groovy baby.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Etihad Stadium, the home of the Premier League champions. Joining us pitch side now is a genuine Hollywood legend, an actor, a comedian, a writer, a bona fide superstar, and he does a better British accent than I think most of us here have. So, Etihad Stadium, give a huge Manchester City welcome to Mike Myers!
Hello, Manchester! I don't know.
Welcome. How long are you in Manchester for? Have you had a chance to look round our great city yet?
I did a little bit of walking around today. It's very, very beautiful. My grandfather, I'm a citizen. My parents are from Liverpool. My grandfather used to work on the railway lines between Liverpool and Manchester. He actually got run over by a train and survived. You should, because he survived. And I love it here. I try and come to the north and anytime I can, and I'm so thrilled to be able to see a game. So,
Sphinxer said what? Sphinxer said what? No, I won't do it. I won't do it. Yeah, I was going to try the Sphinxer said what, but it doesn't matter.
There you go. It's on. I was born at night, but not last night.
Okay, fair play. Fair play. Obviously, your first time here at the Etihad Stadium. I imagine you're really looking forward.
It's my second time here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Second time.
Yeah.
How did you get on last time?
Liverpool lost, but oh well. And that's a good thing that they did, right? Everybody? Yeah.
So as you mentioned, you're Canadian, but you've got British heritage.
Yes.
So I feel like we can claim you a little bit. We can claim you as British. And
I'm a citizen, so.
Yes, so we can. I'm going to claim you as a Northerner as well now.
I feel that.
Yes.
No,
okay.
I do, actually. I really do.
We love that.
Yeah.
Did that help when you were doing, obviously, Austin Powers, you were doing the British accent? Did that just come easy for you then?
I worship my parents, and there's nobody more English than an Englishman who no longer lives in England. So in Canada, on our house, you would just think you're in Old Swan. You know what I mean? And I've just loved all things British. And the second I could, I moved to England. I lived here for 4 years and became a citizen. Okay. And I only moved back to Canada because my dad got ill. Otherwise, I'd be living here now. But.
Wow. And Mike, you've created and played some iconic characters. I know it's a very difficult one for you probably, but is there a favourite? Is there somebody you look back at and think,
I'd say
I enjoyed that?
Dr. Evil, I think, is my favourite because it's more like myself, which is I have big plans and nothing works. Everything, I can't get a phone to work. It's ridiculous, so...
When you've played so many iconic characters, I imagine people are constantly asking you to do them. Can you do the voice? Can you do the finger? Can you do the thing? Does it honestly get a bit annoying?
Do you know what? I never thought things would go as well as they did. I'm just so happy to have a job. And as my dad says, oh, it's a great job. And there's no heavy lifting. So to me, you know, I'm just grateful to have a job. So, and this is like, perks like being able to come see the game is like, you know, when I was a kid, I never saw the Leafs play, the Toronto Maple Leafs, you know.
And obviously, I'm guessing you're a huge Liverpool fan, but have you got any other celebrity friends that maybe support rival teams? Is there a bit of banter going around between you?
Yeah, I'm friends with Gary Oldman. He's a United fan. A producer of Bohemian Rhapsody, Graham King. Okay. He's a Chelsea fan. And Keegan from Key and Peele. Keegan Key is a Liverpool fan.
Right, okay.
God, there's lots of Liverpool fans.
Yeah. Well, we'll move on from that very quickly. Listen, Mike. Genuinely, though, for us to have you down here today is an absolute honour. It's amazing to see you down here. I hope you enjoy the game, but not too much, of course, from a Manchester City perspective. So
this is not my first day. No. I know that if Liverpool scores, you might get a bemused smile from me. But that's
fair play.
It.
We'll take that. We'll take it. Listen, if everybody could put your hands together for, like Natalie said, a true Hollywood superstar, Mr. Mike Myers.
Oh, wow, what a special treat. Mike Myers there alongside Natalie, who is also, by the way, celebrating her birthday. So massive happy birthday to Natalie as well. She covers all the stuff around the Etihad Stadium. And we want to send her all our love from Matchday Live. Not long to go before kick-off, so let's just quick dig into the team and looking at the midfield and the attack. Steve, I was saying to you, I always like Bernardo Silva in these games for his energy. He's on the bench. Probably he's gone for Mahrez. What do you think the thinking was maybe there then from Pep? Not that we can ever guess what Pep's thinking.
No, you can't. I honestly don't know. I mean, obviously, if you're looking for Mahrez to cause the Liverpool defence some problems, we know how good he is. I mean, there's no getting away from it. He is a fantastic player. But I sort of said to you, obviously, the first half, you'll see how he gets on. And then I think early in the second half, if the manager feels as though he's not getting the best out of Mahrez, I think he could change it, and I think he could be the one that makes way for Bernardo Silva. But listen, he's got a fantastic opportunity. We know how good he is. He does love that check comes in and then he can check and come out. He's got that step over where you know it's coming, but as a defender you can't do anything about it. You've got to go with that first movement. But he's got a big chance to put on a really good performance, and if I'm being honest, I really hope that he does.
Absolutely, so do I. And you know, the conversation before the game, Brian, was Haaland, little bit of a knock. Would he be in the team? Would he start? We now know he's not in the squad for this little groin injury. But as Akinfenwa said, it's not bad that you've got a World Cup winner coming in to take his place in Alvarez. How impressed have you been with Alvarez?
Yeah, I think Julian's made a huge impression on everybody. I've heard the coaching staff use this phrase that there's an amazing energy around him, so there's really positive things happen, and whenever he's in the team or in training, everything seems to be positive, and these little things happen not by chance, but people can perceive them as being lucky, but he seems to land on a lot of things in the box, or his teammates have more productive games or more chances, and he just seems to have this amazing ability to create a really good situation out of nothing. So I think it'll be good to see him play and get the chance he deserves today. On the Mahrez one, I think I was thinking about this myself. In the previous cup game, I think Robertson's obviously an outstanding fullback, isn't he? But Riyad scored in that cup game that we watched previously with yourselves,
yes,
and gave him a lot of problems. So I think managers can be creatures of habit. I think maybe Pep was thinking of that.
Yes.
I don't know, Robertson's obviously capable of doing very, very well, but I think in the back of your mind, you'll always be slightly worried about playing against someone who's given him such a torrid time.
Yeah, that's
definitely a factor in Riyad playing in this game today.
It's a great shout. I remember you saying as well earlier on, Steve, if you can have that advantage before you've even kicked a ball, it can be massive, can't it?
I imagine, you guys know, in Robertson's head he'll be determined to do better, but there'll always be a nagging doubt that Mahrez has caused me so many problems in the previous game, and he can't attack me on the inside. It can be difficult, I think.
Robertson could have loads of I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, but that first opportunity, if Mahrez goes inside, outside, or whatever, Robertson's thinking, no.
Yeah, long day ahead.
He was so good in the cup game we covered, wasn't he? Riyad was so good that night.
Absolutely. And he has pepped up in big games with some big goals, so hopefully we'll be seeing one of them today. Brogan, we now get to the part of the show where we look at predictions.
Yeah.
So I'm going to come to you first. How can you see this playing out, and what is your score prediction for today's game?
I think there's going to be a couple of goals. I wouldn't say loads. I'm going to say 2-1 to City, and I reckon it's going to be toe-to-toe, so end-to-end, I hope. Two really strong defences, so we'll see how it goes, but I'm hopeful City can get the edge, so I'm going to say 2-1.
2-1, love that. Okay, Steve?
Yeah. Listen, with the amount of goals that both teams have scored, you're expecting a high-scoring game, so you can guarantee it's going to be a 1-0 or a 1-1 or something like that. I was going to go with 2-1.
Yeah.
But I'll go for 3-1.
3-1 from Steve Howey and Brian Barry Murphy.
I was going to agree with Brogan. I just always have the sense that Liverpool could score a goal. We saw that they didn't do a whole lot in the previous game in the cup and just scored from nothing. And that's always the concern with them. But I think even without Erling, I think our lads will score goals. I think just to be different, I'll go 3-1.
3-1 as well. Okay, lovely. Well, all positive here in the studio. You can see the teams are lining up in the tunnel, so that is where I'm about to hand over to Alistair Mann and Andy Morrison. A few minutes away from this game against Liverpool. Can we close the gap on Arsenal? Can we get those all-important 3 points? We're about to find out. This kicks off Manchester City's big weekender, big games all weekend, every day, and we'll be following them closely. Do join us at half-time and then come join us at full-time. But for now, thank you for watching, and now it's over to Alistair Mann and Andy Morrison, who've got commentary for today's game. Come on, City.
Boy, this feels big. We've had a 2-week break. The FA Cup against Burnley seems a long, long way away. But those 2 weeks, most players have been away on international